to you about what Cylance is and what it does. Following an overview on Cylance differs from the existing solutions that we're all familiar with, I will perform a live demonstration in hopes of validating the claims that we will be making about Cylance. As a company, Cylance's primary passion and mission is protection. This aligns with our passion and mission here at Cerdant. So the partnership that we've developed with Cylance came about quite naturally. Many of you are existing Cerdant customers, and you know us as one of the premier sonic wall partners globally. And we've really made our name focusing on perimeter security and analytics. So we often get asked by customers what solution we recommend, and quite frankly, we've never made any official recommendations because we hadn't found anything effective enough to put our name behind. We've spent a great deal of time building our reputation, so we want to make sure that the products that we actually get behind mean something, and they mean something to our customers. Well, that all changed close to 2 years ago. We had the chance to fully test and implement Cylance and found out for ourselves that it makes endpoint protection effective, and it is real protection that we're confident in recommending to our customer base. The path to achieving this protection is through Cylance, operating quietly, almost invisibly. Cylance makes software that predicts, then blocks cyber attacks on the endpoint in time using execution artificial intelligence algorithms. That's a mouthful of a sentence, so let me say that again. Cylance predicts and cyber attacks, and this happens on the endpoint in real time. Pre-execution artificial intelligence algorithms. True prevention, pre-execution. Doesn't require an internet connection, doesn't signatures, and also extremely lightweight. 0 to 2% CPU and 30 to 40 megs of memory usage at any given time. Truly invisible and silent. Before I dive into specifics, I think it is beneficial for you to know how we see the whole endpoint protection industry. Decades now, everyone has been deploying protection measures, only realize later that those measures have been bypassed and we've become victims of successful attacks. I know anyone that you'll find that would argue that you need endpoint protection, so it has it in some form or another. It's become outdated. This is due in large part to protection methods that have failed to keep up with constantly and rapidly evolving threats. The cycle we've all become accustomed to typically looks like this. A vulnerability is discovered by this, and then they set about creating exploits. One of the most well-known and recent examples is a vulnerability in Microsoft's implementation of the server message block protocol. Blue exploit, which happened to have been conveniently developed by the NSA and then leaked by a group of hackers known as the shadow brokers. This was used as part of the worldwide WannaCry ransomware attack on May 12th of 2017. As an interesting side note to that, we actually held our annual security conference the Friday before the outbreak. And we spent much of our security conference talking about the rise of ransomware, warning our customers that they need to be prepared for that. And that was really when we actually unveiled Cylance as a product that we were going to start supporting. It was ill-fated timing, ironic, I guess you could say, that very weekend there was a worldwide outbreak, because it's something that's been coming for a while now. It's something that's very prevalent, and it's something that everybody needs to be prepared for. So before these kind of protections can be deployed for this type of thing, we have to have a patient zero, that first computer or network that can samples for analysis. And of course, it isn't just a single patient suffers. In the meantime, the infection is spreading, right? In the case of WannaCry, it is estimated to have affected more than 300,000 computers across 150 countries. with total damages ranging from hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. We're talking big money, obviously. After collecting and analyzing samples, AV companies then create signatures and go about distributing these to the subscribers. It adds up to a very reactive, efficient flow process. And this antiquated process is well known to attackers. They simply modify their code and they redeploy their attacks, rinse and repeat. So much of what we see after the first wave of a truly unique attack are just variants of the malware. So how does Cylance offer protection? Well, the best way to describe how we do something is to describe first how we don't do it. We do this in any of the ways you would normally think of when it comes to endpoint protection. Rely on human classifications. We're not dependent on threat researchers to analyze files to patient zero and then try to develop a cure, so to speak. When we start talking about security, endpoint protection, we use a lot of medical terms. And as far as the human aspect of things, like I said, a team of threat researchers really just studying outbreaks of disease and then reacting to try to develop that cure. We don't require on-premise infrastructure. So Cylance, there is no hardware to stand up, nothing to install, no servers to manage, no VMs to spin up, and we're patching and updating as well. With updates. Our updates to our math model happen maybe once a year. And even those updates are controlled by the customer. So you're not going to be getting updates to endpoints or machines that you're not aware of, that you didn't schedule, and that may potentially harm or break certain applications or functions. We don't use signatures. So I want to spend a little bit of time here on this topic because this is the real paradigm shift from the AV. AV is largely dependent on signature-based detection. Ourselves, have we seen this before? Is it bad? If it is, then we stop it. So, to give background, Kara mentioned I've got quite a bit of experience, and I worked for years prior to getting into the security industry as a network administrator, as I'm sure many of you are responsible for large networks. And one of the responsibilities that filtered down to me was endpoint protection. At that time, I worked with multi-signature-based AV products, and it really became a revolving door solutions. I quickly learned not to sign long-term contracts for AV solutions so that when they let me down or they fell short, and they did, I could move on to the next product and see if it was any better. It really became a matter of going to security conferences. Security vendor at the time would hold an annual conference, and I would go just to vet different products, see what was new, see who was doing anything different, and then give their product a try. Kick the tires for a year, decide if it was worth my time and effort, and then move on. So during that time, signature maintenance was a thorn in my side. Depending on your endpoints, get signature updates, it can consume a lot of bandwidth. It is not common for our SonicWall managed customers to contact us to network latency, for example. And then by using our Provideo reporting engine for log that we collect from their perimeter device, we often find that their latency is attributed to all of their clients pulling cloud updates for their AV product at the same time. With Cylance, we're in quick return on investment, just customers back their bandwidth. Also found it difficult to get true insight into whether endpoint had the latest signature DAT file. A frequency of those updates alone continues to increase. If you're using a signature-based AV product, I'm sure you've determined a schedule for signature updates. I've worked with customers that are polling for or pushing updates hourly. The amount of malware that's being created and generated, put into the wild, is at such a rate and speed that really if you have hourly-based signature updates being applied to your machines, you don't have the latest protection against known threats. So another big important thing that we do that philosophy does not do in a lot of cases is we don't wait for threats to execute. We stop threats execution. So heuristics, behavioral analysis, micro-virtualization, sandboxing. All technologies have been proven repeatedly to just not work. For example, sandboxing was relatively popular at one point, but new strains of malware are being engineered to bypass sandboxes. Going back to the WannaCry outbreak, you recall hearing about a kill switch discovered and used to stop the ransomware infection. What happened was a threat researcher accidentally discovered the kill switch domains that were hard-coded into the malware and registered those domains. Now, these domains were literally just a random keyboard mash with a .com at the end. This was actually a sandbox evasion technique. The sandboxes will simulate internet connection, observe if a program is reaching out to a command and control server, for example, and cry. The author of that malware knew that if a response was returned from those fake domains, that it was running in a sandbox, and then it would not deliver its payload, instead hoping to move a sandbox to a production network. The kill switch discovery was accidental, but even that wasn't enough to prevent ransomware infections. It did already infected systems. It slowed down the infection while countermeasures could be deployed. Shortly thereafter, a version of WannaCry with a new kill switch domains appeared, and a few days later, a version of WannaCry surfaced that lacked the kill switch. To insult to injury, about a week later, hackers started using a Mirai botnet to distribute a denial of service attack on the kill switch domains with the intention of knocking them offline. Essentially, they were trying to kill the kill switch. Last word about what Cylance is not. Cylance is not science fiction. When I first saw a demo of Cylance myself in action, it was pre-recorded, and I literally thought it was fictional. Our director of engineering, Josh Skeens, and our principal engineer, Jeremiah Johnson, had attended a conference where they first saw Cylance and came back knowing it was something that we had to get our hands on. They showed me a video of Cylance in action, and I thought it was some kind of spoof. We obviously got our hands on it and found out for ourselves that Cylance does what it says it does. I also like to ensure our customers that the products we manage are the exact same ones that we use ourselves. It's the first introduction to Cylance, both by Josh and Jeremiah. I've spent a lot of time with the product, obviously. I've had the opportunity to visit Cylance headquarters in Irvine, California, and I now manage our installation here at Cerdant. We have our trust in Cylance, which is why we're confident recommending it to our customers. So with understanding of what Cylance does do, let's talk for a little bit about what Cylance does not do, I should say. Let's talk a little bit what Cylance is actually doing. So Cylance has been described as the first company to apply artificial intelligence, algorithm science, and machine learning to cybersecurity. Although the superior effectiveness of Cylance seems like the latest wave of technology, Cylance has been around for quite some time. Founded in 2012, in part by Stuart McClure. Stuart McClure was previously the global CTO for McAfee, and he is also the author of the most successful security book of all time, Hacking Exposed. In his role with McAfee, Stuart understood that decades-old prevention methods were no longer effective, and he found himself constantly apologizing to customers for the fact that they were constantly being breached, why they were just basically in remediation and incident response mode all the time. So he and other Cylance founders began exploring new ways to approach endpoint security. The model they explored and found applicable was the Human Genome Project. If you're not familiar, in 2003, a group of the world's most dedicated scientists completed a 20-year project to map the entire human genome with 99.9% accuracy. Because of their work, it has led to numerous breakthroughs that we benefit from today. Really, this is the same principle and vision drives Cylance. By the DNA of and artificial intelligence techniques, machine learning, and algorithmic science, Cylance is redefining what it means to be secure. As you'll notice here, the Cylance logo reflects the DNA double helix, hallmark of that underlying principle. There are no constant updates needed. This is a complete departure from signature-based methods that we're familiar with. There is no internet connection needed. Look at the current market and landscape. Just about every vendor out there is now calling their product next generation AV. However, most of them are leveraging external cloud resources for analysis and judgment. As we'll see during the demonstration, it's completely independent on the endpoint. We don't rely on human knowable indicators. The AI and machine learning means we are no longer just reacting to known threats. And it means that we can be predictive and preventative, being legit protection against zero-day threats. This is simply the most effective solution available. Cylance conducted a roadshow in 75 cities worldwide a few years ago called the Unbelievable Tour. And the purpose of that was to demonstrate the power of CylancePROTECT by conducting a live cyber attack bake-off between Cylance and three of the most well-known legacy endpoint security products. Significantly outperformed others, detecting and blocking more than 99% of malware samples tested. The competitors' success rates were a mere 52% and 20%. If that's something that you're interested in learning a little bit more about, or would like some details on what happened during those bake-offs and that testing, and to see actual numbers and the products associated with that, please let us know. I have a PDF, a couple pages long, that details all the testing methodology and the results from that Unbelievable Tour. Infrastructure standpoint, we will bring about the Cylance Infinity Cloud. Infinity Cloud is the lifeblood of what Cylance does. A fundamental shift from traditional security methods of detecting just good and bad. It's a highly intelligent machine learning data analysis platform. And that platform is comprised of thousands of AWS nodes. Basically, Cylance Infinity collects data, trains and learns from the data, then calculates likely outcomes based on what it sees. So it is constantly getting smarter, environmental feedback, and a constant stream of new data all around the world. The Cylance Infinity Cloud has been part of the Cylance infrastructure since the inception. This big data cloud is basically where all the machine learning happens. This is where we keep feeding files into that cloud. For years, we've been collecting vast amounts of data from every conceivable source, feed into the Infinity Cloud, and then extracting features that have been defined to be characteristics of the file, depending on its type. So .exe, .dll, .pdf, doc, Java, so on. Good and bad, and analyzing at the DNA level. Going back to the Human Genome Project, if you think of it as studying the DNA of sick patients, looking for common DNA markers, if you do that and find some commonalities, you may be able to identify possible future infection in a person that on the surface is healthy but may have some of these markers present. Now, this information is then used to build the algorithms that are used to supercharge decision-making at the endpoint. The endpoint is being leveraged these mathematical algorithms that have been developed in the Infinity Cloud. And we're using this CPU on the endpoint to simply do what it does best, process mathematical calculations. Obviously, computers are much more powerful and efficient than in past years. Even the phone that everybody carries with them is really a computing powerhouse. So by leveraging what we have access to at the hardware level, we're able to be fast and efficient. We can operate quickly and efficiently with minimal system impact. So it's important then to understand that all of this is done on the endpoint. Although it's cloud-enabled, it is not cloud-dependent. Each isolated machine with no internet connectivity using older algorithms can be proven to be effective against new strains of malware. I know that's a lot of information to digest in a short time. and will likely generate some questions. As Kara said, if you've got those, feel free to submit those, and our principal engineer, Jeremiah Johnson, will answer some of those as we go. We'll take some questions at the end, and we'll follow up with you if necessary after the webinar if we can't get to them all. We'll probably put out a blog post, I would imagine, as a follow-up, or if we need to answer the questions specifically, we'd be happy to do those. You can just email us after the fact. I'll email directly after the presentation as well, if you're interested. So I would like to get to a Cylance in action demo so that we can demonstrate and validate the claims we've been making. It's never my intention to just drone on and on and on and hopefully bore you with, PowerPoint slides. So we want to get into some actual on-hand stuff. So in a moment, I'm going to switch to some virtual machines that we will be running live malware on. But first, I do want to take some time to look at the sample that will be based on information found in VirusTotal. If it's VirusTotal, it's a site that aggregates many antivirus products and online scan engines to check for viruses or verify against any false positives. You can go to this site. It's a free site. You can upload samples for analysis, or you can check the hash of a file to see if AV vendors have analyzed the file before and what their judgment is for the file. I put up the VirusTotal page for the file we'll be working with. Here at the top, the SHA-256 hash. This is a unique fingerprint for this file. If you run a program like hashcalc on file on your computer, it'll generate the SHA-256 hash, which will be unique to that. And this is typically what signature-based AV looks for. They look at the hash, and then they compare it to a database of known bad hashes to determine if the file is malicious. Interesting thing that should be noted about some solutions is the hash database, in order to make it a manageable size, they will actually start phasing out for older threats. So it's viable and possible that older threats that we may consider ourselves immune to now from a computing standpoint can come back, bypass AV, and then infect again. What I want to do is scroll down a little bit here and see here under the Analysis tab that most products identify this particular file as bad stuff. The results in red and this much, and you can see what each vendor has named the signature. So, like I said, if you scroll through here, you'll see just about every vendor, whatever product you're using. I'm sure you can come here and find out what they've flagged this file as. They typically give it different names based on what they want to put in their own database. File they obtained from a phishing campaign and running on. So we know this is a ransomware variant of Locky. Malwarebytes here, for example, list this as ransom.locky. The popular ransomware was released in 2016 as Leucitis. As mentioned when discussing infection cycles, it's now common to repackage older malware, and again, as a variant. This is the case here. This is a version of Locky known as Leucitis. We'll want to make note of this variant, we'll want to make note of when first discovered. So I'm going to go to the Additional Information tab here, and we note the first submission. It was first submitted in August of 2017. As you can see, it tells us about 5 months ago. We're dealing with malware that's about 5 months old. Prior to this call, I loaded this file on an unprotected machine and executable. I'm going to set that machine now. We can hear of what's happened when we detonate this on an endpoint. This is a Windows 7 machine. And if you've never seen a ransomware infection before, this is a kind of first sign. Our paper being replaced with an obvious message that informing us that all of our files are encrypted. This is the kind of thing, if you're a network administrator and you get a call to the help desk, you get a call to a user's computer, and this immediately, this is the kind of thing that, makes my drop. They've replaced the wallpaper, like I said, and there's also a handy HTML file here on the desktop. Open this up. So it gives us some clear instructions on what we need to do. We are provided with the link Tor browser, so we can anonymously surf to this address here. So a Tor browser will bounce that traffic across multiple points. We'll get to that site. Once we get to the site, there's a website that will ask for the PIN. Now, at one point, I believe the site, if you visited the site for this particular ransomware, was asking for half a Bitcoin. Currency is very volatile. I'm sure most of you have seen a lot of news lately about Bitcoin prices, for example. So that number is always changing. But the validity of cryptocurrency should be noted because it also makes extortion, ransomware, even easier. Now criminals have a way to obtain payments via a mechanism that is almost impossible to trace. It's worth noting that there is no guarantee that paying the requested ransom will resolve the issue. In some cases, ransomware is even used as a disguise for disabling machines. In the case of nation-state targeted cyber warfare, for example. Take a look at some of the files that are on this machine. I'm going to pull up File Explorer here. Go to the Pictures folder. All right. So you can set files right here. If you hear a ransomware encryption or whatever, this is basically what it does. It's taken all of our files and it's renamed them. In this case, the file extensions have been replaced with the .Linux extension, hence the name of this particular variant. Consider that in many cases, ransomware will not only encrypt files on the local machine, but will encrypt any file shares that device or user has write access to, whether that's a USB drive that's inserted. In a lot of cases, the first sign of an infection is when someone is unable to access shared files on a network server. I've worked with lots of admins over the years that got hit with ransomware, and typically, once again, it was a call to the help desk. I'm trying to access such and such files on the network, and I can't get to them. They're not available, or something's wrong with them. So, in a very short time, the infection can spread throughout the network. If you're unable to obtain the decryption keys, the only real remediation is to isolate infected devices and re-image or restore from backup. In case, the downtime and man hours for remediation can add up quickly. I think it also should be noted that the explosion of zero-day threats and ransomware over the past year has been one of the biggest concerns for organizations. For example, ransomware as a service is a real thing. Makes it very easy and affordable to launch successful ransomware campaigns. When you have some time, do a quick search for Satan ransomware. You'll find just how easy it is for anyone to create their own cryptoware campaign and start extorting money. There are now entire business models and customer service built around these types of offerings. Annual threat report from last year reported nearly 4 million ransomware attack attempts in 2015. In 2016, that number increased to a mind-boggling 638 million. 4 million in 2015 to 638 million in 2016. And once reports for 2017 are published, I fully expect the number to be much higher still. This stuff is proliferating at an astronomical pace, and if you haven't been hit with it yet, consider yourself lucky for now, but obviously be prepared. And even though these type of attacks are easier to create now, more than they've ever been before, there are still major actors behind some very sophisticated attacks. A lot of what we see now is weaponized, and it's funded by nation states or by large criminal organizations. This has been very profitable for them, and they are well-funded and very resourceful. Now I'd like to move over to a machine that we've actually protected with Cylance and work with the same malware we just watched encrypt this. Right, so this desktop here, I have the Cylance dialog box open. It's open to the Threats tab. No current threats that have been observed on this device, so this window is empty. There is CylancePROTECT icon in the system tray. Detect the status of, and we can also obtain agent information on. I'm going to command prompt. Status on this device. An IP config here, you see that the adapter on the machine is disconnected. As mentioned previously, we will not be communicating with a local server or a server to provide assistance with analysis. Analysis and judgment will be done by the agent on this machine using mathematical algorithms. This is a key differentiator with Cylance. And to prevent malware pre-execution, we have to render a judgment immediately. Even taking time to do lookups on local servers or cloud servers is critical time that we can't afford to waste. If we rely on external sources, analysis and judgment, what happens when that communication isn't available for whatever reason? If you're evaluating other products that are marketing themselves as generation, I would get a clear answer on whether or not everything's actually done on the point. Also open Task Manager here. Move there. Pull the System Performance tab here. So we started working with the malware momentarily. Our hope is to see Cylance act quickly with minimal prolonged system impact. So opening File Explorer here. Folder here named Malware Excluded. Very tricky name. This folder has been exempted from Cylance protection. This is where I place any of the bad stuff that I want to test with, allowing me to store it on the device without it being detected and quarantined by Cylance. So drilling down into the Leucitis folder, this is the exact same file used to encrypt the previous machine. I do want to emphasize that these systems are isolated VMs that we've taken precautions with to prevent infection of production machines. I think it is important to security solutions for yourself. So if you'd like to run tests like this one and don't have experience doing so, please contact us. We do have a guide that we'd be able to provide to you that lays out the structure for creating a quick lab and the precautions to take when testing malware. So like I said, I think it's important to do this for yourself to see what it looks like hands-on in an environment where you can put some of your own files into it, see how it actually functions. But for now, the typical warning, try this at home, should apply. In a moment, I'm going to simply drag and drop this file to the desktop. When I do so, we hope to see Cylance inspect this file, and because we already know it's ransomware, we hope to see it render judgment and quarantine the file. So I'm going to go ahead and move this from the Malware Excluded folder and simply place it on the desktop. This. Now you can see Cylance quickly inspects the file, and it has now quarantined the file. And check the performance monitor, you'll see the impact to the system was negligible. Obviously, happened very quickly. It is very important to note that Cylance inspected that file and rendered a judgment pre-execution. I did not attempt to launch the file. I simply moved it to desktop. Recognized that it was new to the system, file in real time, and based on the file composition alone, successfully quarantined the file. All done quickly and quietly, leaving the system fully available to the end user to continue working. Validating claims that we operate silently is one thing, but what I just showed you was the conviction of the Leucitis ransomware strain that we saw on VirusTotal. Everyone knows about, and they know it's bad. So here's the cure. I'm going to check the agent version we've got running on this machine. This folder protect version, please observe the second to last line here on the properties window. This is current as of 12/5/2016. This is I created in December of 2016, over a year ago, and then disconnected. What we actually just witnessed was Cylance analyze and convict ransomware that was discovered in August of 2017, as we saw on VirusTotal, using an agent that was offline over 8 months before the ransomware existed. I've spoken with a customer who would be willing to take their signature-based AV, not update it for 8+ months, and then run new strains of ransomware on their machine against it. Cylance is predictive, it is preventative, and it does offer zero-day threat protection. And to take one step further, I'm going to open File Explorer again so we can check the Cylance installation. Excuse me. All right. So host Infinity model, this is the algorithms that were built in the Infinity Cloud and deployed to the endpoints, and the algorithm that we're using. So the Cylance host Infinity model, this is a math model from May of 2016. I mentioned towards the beginning of this presentation, Cylance will make updates to the math model, which will be updated on endpoint maybe once or twice a year. Even older models are active against new strains of malware, as we've just seen. With Cylance, gone are the days of constant updates and worrying if your endpoints are connected and receiving the latest signatures. I'm going to mine here real quick. So I always like to make the comparison between Cylance and legacy AV solutions to the choice given to Neo in the movie The Matrix. For any of you sci-fi fans out there that remember when Keanu Reeves was a super hacker instead of some dude trying to sell you websites during the Super Bowl, you take the blue pill that lives content with the illusion that the same old protection methods are keeping us safe, or you take the red pill, open your eyes to the next generation of endpoint security. There is also one more choice. I'm sorry, I'm really dating myself here with the cheesy references from the 80s and 90s. Obviously, these are over Kara's head. As she pointed out at the beginning, she's much younger than I am, so maybe she'll be inspired to go watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure again. You can't go wrong there, in my opinion. Great cinema. I would like to shift gears briefly and discuss all of the features that we've included with CylancePROTECT. So Cylance consists of a small agent that integrates with a cloud console, visibility and management. What demonstrated was just one of the components of CylancePROTECT. Malware execution control. Malware execution control is really the heart of what we do. Where you know signature, we're leveraging machine learning with predictive analysis and execution prevention. All of this is done with no depth scans. If your users constantly complain about system degradation due to constant AV file scans, Cylance easily alleviates that pain point. In addition, there are components that are included with CylancePROTECT. Encryption is a component, especially when defending against fileless attacks. Silence memory misuse, stop exploits, halt process injection, and block privilege escalation. Control. We can take advantage of this advanced feature as did by your organization. Thus the ability to stop unauthorized PowerShell, ActiveScript, VBA macros, weaponized docs, and other further fileless attacks. We can even prevent PowerShell console usage if not employing other methods to do so. Device control. We provide control over the use of USB mass storage devices, which can help prevent exfiltration of data through removable media. And application control. This advanced feature is basically a binary lockdown for fixed function devices. So the ability to control a change window makes it flexible when updates to systems are needed. We have customers that take advantage of this feature for their POS systems, for example. Now, with the limited time we have for a webinar like this, we simply can't take a deep dive into each of these components. If you would like to know more, please contact us after today's webinar. I have specific data sheets that I can provide for each of these particular features that will give you a nice overview, understanding of what it does, and a clear explanation, a little more in depth, but not too crazy deep, of what those features mean to your security. As a whole, all will keep your network, your endpoints protected. Typically, the execution control and the memory protection, I consider endpoints fully protected. And we start talking about some of those advanced features to build on top of that. So next steps, proof of concept is critical at securing your infrastructure. I think it is very important to make a decision how you're going to protect your infrastructure. Take that seriously. That shouldn't be taken lightly. So we are more than happy to let you try Cylance for yourself at charge so that you can decide if this provides the peace of mind that your systems are protected. We need a dedicated engineer to work with you. Our deployment team is comprised of CISSPs and certified ethical hackers, and they will walk with you personally to deploy on a set of endpoints using a phased approach. This process can be done typically in 2 to 4 weeks' time, depending on your schedule, your timeline, how quickly you want to accelerate things. We work to access to your own portal. We get Cylance deployed, and then initially just monitor your devices so you can see what Cylance finds. Move you to an active file protection state and start monitoring and scripting, some of those advanced features that I was just speaking about. So enable some of those advanced features, utilize those, and so those work in your environment. After that, basically can take a look back at how Cylance performed, and you can judge if it meets your success criteria. So it's something that we want you to be hands-on with. We want to work with you to get it deployed in your environment on a certain number of machines so that you can validate the claims for yourself. Like I said, with something as critical as endpoint security, which really is the last line of defense, the choice that you're making is the best choice for your organization. Whether that's Cylance or something else, that's up to you. Like I said, we feel confident in the solution. We use it ourselves, and that's why I stand behind it, and that's why it's the first endpoint protection product that Cerdant has ever recommended to its customers. So that's really what I hope to cover today to give you, I hope this has been informative. I hope you have a better understanding of what Cylance is, what it does, general understanding of how it operates and how it's different from legacy-based solutions. And since we do have a few minutes left, questions here. I know Jeremiah has probably been answering some questions as we go. So I'm going to check my chat window here and see what Jeremiah is throwing my way. All right, here, can I run this with my current AV? That's an excellent question. Yes, it can run alongside your current product. So deployments now, no deployment is ever the same. And typically, what we find is obviously is running AV proof of concept. So this is going to speak directly to the proof of concept phase that I just talked about. We can install this alongside your current solution. Even though we keep using AV, the term AV, the new product, as I hope you've seen, it's not doing things the same way as your typical AV is doing. So we have no problem running this side by side with other AV solutions. Really what we'll do in the environment, and as I mentioned during the phase 1, we actually just run it in detection mode. So we call it observation mode. So it's going to be taking any action on any of your files initially. We're basically just going to scan the system, see what we find, and then make some determinations. We'll move to phase 2, where we go into actual auto quarantine mode for file protection. Then we might make some exclusions. So the exclusion is we have to get the clean folder current solution and exclude it from Cylance detection. Like I did in the demo where I had my malware excluded folder, we specify your other product's quarantine folder. Versa. On your other product, you would exclude the Cylance directories. Really just so that the two products don't get into a fight over who's going to quarantine what and endlessly get into a loop of grabbing files out of each other's quarantine. Decide to actually run that as a supplement to their current solution. So that's a viable option, completely understandable. You'll run two solutions. One will be a signature-based AV, one will be Cylance as a supplement. Rip and replace. So at Cerdant, we used a previous product. We actually ran through the POC ourselves, side by side with our product 4, and then we uninstalled that product. Cylance is our single line events on the endpoint at this time. Now, there may be some other reasons for that. I've worked with customers that may have licensing still left on their current AV solution. I can't justify it to higher ups as, why would they uninstall something that they're paying for? So they have no problem running it side by side in that regard. I've also worked with customers that have deployed this just in time for a renewal on their product. And then once that expires, they have the immediate sources to install that product. So kind of buys them some time to let that product just sit there while they get around to uninstalling it. Because like I said, it's not a problem to run this in tandem with other solutions. Okay, let's take another question here. Can the user release a quarantine file? Okay, so this is a good one. I know products, especially home desktop products, but it sometimes trickles over to business products as well. Give the user the ability to manipulate the person on the endpoint. So, for example, you might really want to get a file. You might need a file really bad, and you'll go and you'll download the file. It gets caught by your AV solution, so you go ahead and you release that from quarantine, or you temporarily, which is a popular one with home ones, you temporarily disable the AV solution, giving yourself enough time to download the file. In this environment, this seems it should be apparent. You should never have that control over a file. If you give the user the option of convenience versus security, unfortunately, most of them are going to use convenience. And, to be understandable in a lot of regards, the files that they're trying to obtain, to acknowledge they're legitimate files, they be downloading those from legitimate websites. I mean, attackers are, very smart at what they do anymore. Waterhole attacks, if you ever heard of waterhole attacks, compromising legitimate websites, web servers, those type of things. You can inject all kind of malware into legitimate sites. So even though it's a trusted source, they understand that could be a way for attackers to infiltrate the network. So the nice thing about Cylance is, obviously from an admin standpoint, using a cloud-based console, you have central control over the infrastructure. So from a cloud-based console, you can log in, you can see the endpoint, you view a quarantine file, for example, and you can make necessary final determination on whether or not that should be released to the end user. So I don't have the ability to demonstrate it right now. Do is we'll give you a heads up on what it looks like. If I were to see a file get quarantined, well, we actually saw it in action. The file just disappeared from the desktop, right? Drag that file to the desktop and it disappeared. It was in quarantine. It's gone. Poof. From the Cylance Central Console, I can go to that device. I can that quarantine file, determine it's okay. I can waive that file, and it will literally reappear on the desktop for the user. So they're back in place. So to answer the question, users don't have the ability to disable any of this, to make any determinations. That has to go through an administrator. That's the safest way to handle it, and that can be done centrally from the cloud console. Is Cylance PCI compliant? Okay, good question. Yes, so Cylance has multiple regulatory compliance. It's been product validated by PCI, HIPAA, NIST has validated it, FIPS 142 certification. There's also third-party validation from NSS Labs, AV Test. So yeah, we are PCI compliant. Can speak to false positives. Okay, so false positives depends on, I guess, what you're looking for on false positives. This is why we do a phased deployment approach. I think with solution, it's better to have a false positive than it is to have a false negative. I mean, to err on the side of caution, we'd rather be safe than sorry, right? I'd rather quarantine a file that made as opposed to let a file through that we find out later we know is bad. Cylance, really a lot of the upfront heavy lifting work is during the deployment process. When we get into phase 1, that's where we deploy in observation mode. And this gives us a chance to do multiple things. One is we actually get a chance to scan every binary on the system. We do a one-time scan through deployment method. And basically, we scan every binary, and then we go back and we look at the data. What's on fine. And from there, we make some determinations ahead of time before any action has been taken. So, yeah, there might be files that are flagged after review. We can understand why they were flagged, and then we may determine that they're legitimate applications. We basically waive those files. Same for files that are illegitimate or malicious. We review those as files. We do that up front before we move you to an active protective state. So by the time we've moved you to an active protective state, we've seen everything in the environment, we've touched on it, and we're basically at what we consider threat zero. So to get you to threat zero, we consider threat zero is every machine has self-deployed and every threat that was detected has been fixed. From now on, it's really low noise. Like I said, I manage our Cylance installation, and it's not a hassle. You will have files that will be quarantined from time to time, and you go back and review and make a determination at that time. So many false positives. Like I said, the neat thing is we get into the console, there's the proof of concept. The information that you can obtain from detected files is pretty cool. You'll get some behind-the-scenes look at why Cylance is making a determination based on post-conviction analysis. Okay, so like I said, Cylance Infinity Cloud, for example, we're reactive or proactive. So we actually make a judgment on a file, and if it's a zero-day threat, it's a file that no one's ever seen before, right? So Cylance is going to convict that file, quarantine it. Now, with a configuration setting for installation, we may determine that we want to upload those files to the Infinity Cloud for analysis. Now, based on what is seen in the Infinity Cloud, we're doing post-analysis convicted files, which is the opposite of what AV does, where we analyze something, determine it's bad, and make a conviction, right? We determine, we deploy hashes, the signatures for those files. So with post-conviction analysis in Cylance, we'll actually be able to look at the file after it's been quarantined, and then we'll get a lot of threat indicators, and specifically what was found for that with that file. We found that it was bad, and that Cylance actually uses a confidence score based on those findings. So you actually get a lot of insight into what files are actually doing, composed of, once again, going back to looking at the DNA level, so to speak. So I do have a couple more questions here. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time. So we'll record outstanding questions back to you. Like I said, we'll probably put together some kind of blog post, something, post-webinar to address some of those questions. And of course, we'd be happy to have some one-on-one conversations with you to answer some of your questions specifically, especially if they're specific to your environment. I do here up on the screen. Informed, you can check us out on our blog. Like I said, we'll have some more stuff coming up here shortly. Cerdant is our Twitter handle. Your local or your Cerdant sales rep would be a great source of information. You can reach me, jason.palm, that's palm like palm tree, at cerdant.com. Feel free to email me directly. I'd be happy to answer your questions as well. And if we need to set up some one-on-one time, we'd be happy to do that. I want to thank everyone for joining us, for being attentive. I hope this was informative, and I'll let Kara wrap this up for us briefly.
Echo what Jason said. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate the time that it takes to do something like this, and also echo what Jason said. We'll make sure to follow up individually on any questions that weren't answered during the webinar, so that we can, really elaborate a little bit better as well. And like Jason said, please feel free to take advantage of the proof of concept. Cylance makes it very, very easy for us to offer things like that as a managed services partner of theirs. They also make it very easy to offer the product. Most legacy solutions like this require either full year or multi-year purchases, and because of the unique relationship that Cylance offers to its partners, they actually allow us to offer the licenses on a monthly, within a monthly billing model, and actually based on usage versus some sort of projected usage. So, we're happy to share some more information on pricing and things like that, obviously, as well. Please feel free to reach out to your individual Cerdant sales reps. You don't have one, you can also reach us at sales@cerdant.com, or our general sales line is 1-877-616-9884. But we'll follow up with all of that information after the webinar as well. But again, thank you for taking time, and please feel free to send additional questions our way. And everybody.